The breaking point. Commander Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck of the diplomatic vessel Endeavour, watching stars streak past in the eternal darkness of space. She was 42 years old, with short black hair touched with silver at the temples and eyes that had seen too many negotiations end in disappointment. For 15 years, she had represented humanity in the Galactic Union, speaking words of peace to species that barely considered humans worthy of attention. Tonight, everything she had worked for was about to end. The communication alert chimed with an urgency that made her heart skip. She moved to the console and accepted the encrypted transmission. The face that appeared belonged to Admiral Thomas Kavinsky, commander of Earth's defense fleet. His expression told her everything before he spoke a single word. New Horizon is gone, he said quietly. All 50,000 colonists. The Kryloth didn't even bother with a warning. Their battle group just opened fire and kept firing until there was nothing left but debris. Sarah felt something cold settle in her chest. New Horizon had been a mining colony on the edge of human space, families who had traveled across the galaxy to build new lives. Children who played in domed parks. Teachers and engineers and farmers trying to create something beautiful in the darkness. Now they were gone, reduced to scattered atoms floating in the void. "Do we have evidence?" she asked, her voice steadier than she felt. "Full tactical recordings from their defense satellites." The Kryloth fleet commander Zarthek sent a message afterward. He called it a lesson in respecting boundaries. He said humans need to learn their place in the galaxy. Sarah closed her eyes. For 250 years, humanity had been learning its place. They had joined the Galactic Union with wonder and hope, believing they had found friends among the stars. Instead, they found masters. The elder races looked at humans and saw primitives, barely evolved creatures from a backwater planet who had stumbled into faster-than-light travel through luck rather than genius. The Kryloth Empire had been the worst. They were an ancient civilization, rulers of 200 star systems, with technology that made human weapons look like toys. They had demanded tribute from human colonies. They had seized human ships for inspection and never returned them. They had killed human traders who protested unfair agreements. And every time humanity complained to the Galactic Council, they were told to be patient, to prove themselves worthy of respect through centuries of obedience. "Convene the World Defense Council," Sarah said. "I'm returning to Earth immediately." The meeting took place in Geneva, deep beneath the mountains in a facility that officially didn't exist. Sarah sat at a circular table with 11 other people who held humanity's fate in their hands. Director James Morrison presided over the council. He was 70 years old, a veteran of humanity's first contact wars when early explorers had encountered hostile species in the outer reaches. He had spent his entire adult life preparing for a day he hoped would never come. "The evidence is undeniable," Morrison said, displaying the tactical recordings on holographic screens surrounding the table. "The Kryloth destroyed New Horizon deliberately. This wasn't a border incident or a misunderstanding. This was murder. We must take this to the Galactic Council," said Ambassador Catherine Park. "Demand justice under Union law." "Justice?" General Maria Santos laughed bitterly. "When have the elder races ever given us justice? They'll call it an unfortunate incident. They'll suggest we shouldn't have built colonies so close to Kryloth space. They'll tell us to file a formal complaint that will sit in archives for the next century while nothing changes." Sarah spoke carefully. "If we go to war, we'll be fighting alone. The other races won't help us. Most of them will probably side with the Kryloth. Then we'll fight alone," Morrison said. "The question isn't whether we fight. The question is whether we're ready." Dr. Robert Kim, Director of Advanced Weapons Development, leaned forward. "Project Avalanche has been operational for 3 years. We have 7,000 warships equipped with technology the elder races don't know exists. Our quantum phase drives can move through dimensions they haven't discovered. Our Neuralink combat systems give our pilots reaction times they can't match. We've been building and hiding and preparing for exactly this moment." 7,000 ships against the Kryloth's 100,000, Park said. "Against the military might of an empire that has conquered civilizations for 10,000 years. Numbers mean nothing if the enemy can't see you coming," Kim replied. "Our stealth technology is generations beyond anything in the galaxy. Our weapons use principles they don't understand. We've studied their tactics for centuries while they've ignored us as beneath their notice. That arrogance is their weakness." Morrison looked at each council member in turn. "This isn't just about the Kryloth. This is about every species that has treated humanity as inferior. Every trade agreement that robbed us. Every colony that was raided while the council looked away. Every human who died because the galaxy decided our lives didn't matter. We can continue being victims, or we can show them what humans really are." The vote was unanimous. Humanity would go to war. Sarah returned to the Galactic Council station 3 days later. The station was a massive structure orbiting a neutral star system, a place where 1,000 species gathered to debate laws they rarely followed. She had walked these corridors for 15 years, always feeling small among beings that towered over her or slithered past or floated through the air. Today, she walked differently. Today, she walked like someone who had stopped caring what they thought. The council chamber was enormous, designed to accommodate species of every size and environmental need. Representatives sat in sections suited to their biology, some in water tanks, some in methane atmospheres, some in gravity fields that would crush a human instantly. At the center sat the 5 eternal voices, the elder species that had founded the Galactic Union a million years ago. Sarah requested an emergency session. The Kryloth ambassador, a massive creature with armored scales and 6 eyes, watched her approach with something like amusement. He had dismissed her complaints hundreds of times before. He expected today to be no different. The human wishes to speak, announced the session coordinator, a being of pure energy that communicated through translated light. Regarding the incident at New Horizon Colony. Incident? Sarah's voice echoed through the chamber. 50,000 humans were murdered. Their homes were destroyed. Their lives were ended by a deliberate military strike. This wasn't an incident. This was genocide. The Kryloth ambassador's translator rendered his response in flat, emotionless tones. New Horizon was constructed illegally in disputed territory. The colony was warned multiple times. They chose to ignore those warnings. The consequences were regrettable but necessary. Disputed territory? Sarah pulled up star charts. New Horizon was 70 light-years from the nearest Kryloth outpost. There was no dispute. There was no warning. There was only murder, and you're sitting here justifying it because you think we're too weak to matter. One of the eternal voices spoke, its words rippling through the chamber like thunder. The human shows excessive emotion. The council has reviewed the evidence. The matter will be investigated. Justice will be determined through proper channels over the appropriate timeframe. Sarah laughed. It wasn't a pleasant sound. Appropriate timeframe. How long does it take to admit that killing 50,000 civilians was wrong? 10 years? 100? Will my species still exist by the time you finish your investigation? The human forgets her place, the Kryloth ambassador said. You are young. You are inexperienced. You must learn patience and humility before demanding action from your elders. Patience, Sarah repeated softly. We've been patient for 250 years. We've followed your rules. We've accepted your judgments. We've swallowed our anger and our grief because we believed that eventually, if we proved ourselves worthy, you would treat us with basic respect. We were wrong. The chamber grew quiet. Something in Sarah's voice had changed. The representatives of 1,000 species felt it, a shift in the air, a sense that something important was about to happen. We're done being patient, Sarah said. We're done following rules that only protect the powerful. We're done accepting that human lives matter less than the lives of species that have been part of the Union longer. On behalf of Earth and all human territories, I formally declare that humanity is withdrawing from the Galactic Union. Effective immediately, we consider ourselves at war with the Kryloth Empire and any species that chooses to support them. The Kryloth ambassador rose to his full height, 3 meters of armored muscle and barely contained rage. You cannot be serious. Your species has perhaps 20,000 ships. Most of them are cargo vessels and exploration craft. The Kryloth Empire commands 100,000 warships. We have weapons that can sterilize planets. We have conquered 100 civilizations. You are insects declaring war on giants. Sarah smiled. It was the smile of someone who knew a secret, someone who had been waiting years to see the look on her enemy's face. That's what you've always believed. That's what we wanted you to believe. At that exact moment, across the galaxy, something extraordinary happened. In orbit around Kryloth Prime, invisible to sensors, 3,000 human warships decloaked simultaneously. Around the council station itself, 500 more appeared from nowhere, their weapons powered but not yet firing. In every major star system, near every elder race homeworld, near every military installation that had seemed so secure, human ships materialized like ghosts becoming solid. The chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives screamed questions in 1,000 languages. The eternal voices demanded explanations. And the Kryloth ambassador stared at the tactical displays showing his homeworld surrounded by an enemy fleet that shouldn't exist. How? He whispered. Did you really think we spent 250 years doing nothing? Sarah asked. Did you believe we were too stupid to plan ahead? While you laughed at our primitive technology, our scientists were working in secret. While you ignored us as beneath your notice, we were building ships in hidden facilities. While you treated us like children, we were learning everything about you. Your weaknesses. Your blind spots. Your arrogance. She turned to address the entire council. We didn't want this war. We came to you in peace. We asked for justice through your laws. You gave us nothing but contempt. So now we'll take what we need. The Kryloth Empire will answer for what they've done. And every species in this chamber will learn a lesson that humanity learned long ago on our homeworld. What lesson? One of the eternal voices asked. Never push the quiet ones too far. The transmission came from Admiral Kavinsky. All ships are in position, Commander. We're ready on your order. Sarah looked at the Kryloth ambassador one last time. This is your only chance. Surrender Commander Zarthek for trial. Pay reparations for the lives you've taken. Acknowledge that what you did was wrong. Or we dismantle your empire piece by piece until there's nothing left but the memory of what happens when you mistake patience for weakness. The ambassador said nothing. His pride wouldn't allow it. His arrogance couldn't accept that humans might actually pose a threat. So be it, Sarah said quietly. The war began at that moment, and the galaxy would never be the same. The galaxy learns. The first strike came within hours of Sarah Chen's declaration. Captain Marcus Rivera sat in the command chair of the warship Prometheus, surrounded by holographic displays showing 3 separate star systems simultaneously. He was 38 years old, a tactical genius who had spent his entire career preparing for a war that everyone said would never happen. Now that it was here, he felt strangely calm. Quantum phase drive charged and ready, reported his navigation officer, Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka. All ships in formation. Stealth fields at maximum. Marcus studied the targets. 3 Kryloth military installations, each one a fortress that had stood unconquered for centuries. Orbital weapons platforms. Defense fleets. Shield generators powerful enough to withstand nuclear bombardment. The Kryloth had built them to be impregnable, symbols of their eternal dominance. They had never imagined an enemy that could attack all 3 simultaneously from impossible angles. Begin phase transition, Marcus ordered. The Prometheus and her battle group slipped sideways through dimensions that conventional sensors couldn't detect. They moved through spaces between spaces, traveling distances that should have taken days in mere seconds. The Kryloth had discovered 8 dimensions. Humanity had found 12. That difference was about to matter. They emerged inside the shield perimeters, appearing in positions that should have been impossible to reach. The Kryloth defenses were designed to stop enemies coming from outside. They had never considered enemies materializing in their midst. All weapons free, Marcus said quietly. Fire. The human ships unleashed weapons that the elder races didn't understand. Plasma lances that burned at temperatures found only in stellar cores. Kinetic projectiles accelerated to relativistic speeds. And most devastating of all, quantum disruptors that didn't just destroy matter but erased it from existence, leaving nothing behind but radiation. The first fortress died in 14 seconds. Its shields never activated. Its weapons never fired. One moment it was there, a monument to Kryloth power. The next moment it was dust. The second fortress managed to raise shields, but they might as well have been paper. Human weapons punched through them like they weren't there, targeting power cores and command centers with surgical precision. 30 seconds after the attack began, it was a lifeless hulk tumbling through space. The third fortress actually fought back. Its commander was quick enough to scramble fighters and return fire. For 90 seconds, there was a real battle. Then the human ships activated their Neuralink combat systems, and the engagement became a massacre. Human pilots, their minds directly connected to their ships, moved and reacted with inhuman speed. They dodged incoming fire by microseconds. They targeted weak points that conventional sensors couldn't identify. When the battle ended, 200 Kryloth fighters were destroyed, and not a single human ship had been hit. Marcus watched the aftermath on his displays. 3 fortresses that had protected Kryloth space for generations were gone. The enemy had lost 12,000 soldiers and hadn't managed to damage a single human vessel. He felt no satisfaction, only a cold awareness of what this meant. Humanity had crossed a line. There would be no going back. Sir, we're receiving transmissions from Kryloth Command, Tanaka reported. They're demanding to know how we penetrated their defenses. They're calling it impossible. Tell them to ask their scientists, Marcus said. If they have any left after we're done. Across the galaxy, the Kryloth Empire mobilized for war. Fleet Commander Corvan assembled the greatest armada his species had ever created. 50,000 warships, more firepower than had been gathered in living memory. He was confident. Humans might have surprised them with their first strike, but now the Kryloth were ready. Now they would show these primitives the price of challenging an elder race. The fleets met in the Nexus system, empty space between territories where battles had been fought for millennia. Corvan positioned his ships in a defensive sphere, overlapping fields of fire that no enemy could penetrate. His sensors showed 700 human ships approaching. He had 50,000. The numbers spoke for themselves. "They're fools," he told his bridge crew. "They see our strength and they still come forward. We'll destroy them and then move on Earth itself. We'll teach humanity what happens to species that forget their place." The human fleet advanced steadily, making no attempt to hide or maneuver. They seemed to be accepting a conventional battle, ship against ship, exactly what Corvan wanted. He waited until they entered maximum weapons range, then gave the order to fire. 10,000 Kryloth ships opened fire simultaneously. The void lit up with energy beams and missiles, enough firepower to sterilize a dozen planets. It should have been overwhelming. It should have been decisive. Every shot missed. The human ships flickered, phasing in and out of normal space too quickly for targeting systems to track. They moved through the incoming fire like dancers through rain, never quite where the Kryloth weapons expected them to be. And while they dodged, they returned fire with devastating accuracy. Kryloth ships began dying by the dozens, then by the hundreds. Their shields couldn't stop weapons they didn't understand. Their armor melted under plasma lances that burned at impossible temperatures. Their crews died before they understood what was happening. Corvan watched his fleet dissolve around him. In 10 minutes of battle, he lost 5,000 ships. In 20 minutes, he had lost 15,000. The humans hadn't lost a single vessel. They moved and fought like nothing he had ever seen, like they knew where his ships would be before they got there. "Retreat," he finally ordered, his voice hollow. "All ships retreat to defensive positions." But retreating was harder than advancing. The human ships pursued relentlessly, picking off stragglers, destroying ships that fell behind. By the time the Kryloth fleet reached safety, Corvan had lost 23,000 vessels. The greatest armada in Kryloth history had been cut in half in a single engagement. The news spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. The Kryloth, one of the 5 strongest military powers in the known universe, had been defeated. Not just defeated but humiliated. Species that had been considering joining the war against humanity suddenly reconsidered. Alliances that had seemed certain began to crumble. On the occupied planet Vexus Prime, Sergeant Elena Rodriguez led her Marines through the capital city. The Kryloth had held this world for 30 years, using its population as slave labor in their mining operations. The colonists here had been human once, but decades of oppression had broken something in them. They moved through the streets with heads down, eyes that had forgotten hope. Elena was 40 years old, a career Marine who had grown up on stories of Earth's wars before the stars. She had joined the military to protect her species, and for 20 years she had done nothing but watch humans die while the Galactic Council did nothing. Today was different. Today she was here to set people free. Her force was small, only 300 Marines against a Kryloth garrison of 10,000. The numbers were absurd. Any conventional commander would have waited for reinforcements. But Elena had studied human military history. She knew that sometimes, small forces with superior training and motivation could achieve impossible things. The ancient Spartans had held mountain passes against armies 100 times their size. Special forces operators from Earth's wars had changed the course of battles through surgical strikes. Today, she would add another chapter to that history. The Marines moved through the city in small teams, using the buildings and narrow streets to negate the Kryloth numerical advantage. They struck fast and vanished before the enemy could respond. They used weapons specifically designed to penetrate Kryloth armor. And most importantly, they fought with a ferocity that the enemy had never encountered. The Kryloth were soldiers, yes, but they were soldiers of an empire that had conquered through overwhelming force. They had never faced an enemy that refused to break, that kept coming no matter how many times they were knocked down. They had never fought humans in close combat. Elena's team cornered a Kryloth patrol in a marketplace. The aliens were bigger, stronger, with natural armor that could turn aside blades. But Elena had grown up on a world where every apex predator wanted to kill her ancestors. Humans had survived not because they were the biggest or the strongest, but because they were the smartest and the most relentless. The fight lasted 90 seconds. When it ended, 6 Kryloth soldiers were dead, and Elena's team had suffered 2 minor injuries. They moved on without pausing, without celebrating, like machines programmed for a single purpose. The battle for Vexus Prime took 18 hours. When it ended, the Kryloth garrison had been destroyed. The human Marines had lost 47 soldiers. Elena walked through the liberated streets as colonists emerged from hiding, crying and laughing and unable to believe they were finally free. An old man approached her, his face weathered by years of hard labor. "Are you really here?" he asked. "Is the war really happening? Are we finally fighting back?" "We're here," Elena confirmed. "And we're never leaving our people behind again." In a conference room on the neutral station of the compact, Ambassador Lu Wei met with representatives from 20 minor species. These were civilizations that had always been caught between the great powers, forced to choose sides in wars that weren't their own. Lu was 55 years old, a diplomat who had spent 3 decades building relationships with these smaller nations, earning trust through patience and honesty. The Kryloth are calling for a general alliance against humanity, said Ambassador Thelnor of the Savari Union. They're promising protection and favorable trade agreements to any species that joins them. And what do you think of their promises? Lu asked. Thelnor's translator rendered a sound like bitter laughter. We've heard Kryloth promises before. They promised to protect the Velkari. Then they conquered them. They promised fair trade with the Kintari. Then they stole their mineral rights. Why would we trust them now? Then don't trust them, Lu said simply. Trust yourselves. Watch what's happening. The Kryloth had 100,000 ships. Humanity had 7,000. Logic says the Kryloth should have won easily. Instead, they're losing. Their fortresses are falling. Their fleets are being destroyed. Why? Because you were hiding your true strength, said another ambassador. Because you were planning this for decades. Exactly, Lu confirmed. We planned. We prepared. We did what we needed to survive in a galaxy that treated us like children. And now we're showing everyone what happens when you push too far. But here's what matters to you. We're not conquering. We're not demanding tribute. We're not forcing anyone to join us. We're simply removing a threat and demanding justice for what was done to our people. She pulled up holographic images of the liberated colonies. These are human worlds that were occupied. The colonists here were treated as slaves. Now they're free. We didn't kill every Kryloth on these planets. We captured them. We're treating them according to laws of war that the Galactic Council supposedly believes in but never enforces. We're showing that power doesn't have to mean tyranny. The ambassadors exchanged glances. They had expected humans to be vengeful, to match Kryloth brutality with brutality of their own. Instead, they were seeing restraint combined with overwhelming force. What do you want from us? Thelnor asked. Nothing, Lu said. Stay neutral if you want. Join the Kryloth if you must. We won't punish you for making your own choices. We only ask that you watch and remember. Remember who started this war. Remember who has shown mercy and who hasn't. And when it's over, remember that humanity kept its principles even when we had the power to abandon them. Within a week, 17 of the minor species declared formal neutrality. 3 weeks later, 5 of them quietly opened diplomatic channels with Earth. The galaxy was shifting, alliances reforming around a new reality where humanity could no longer be ignored. In her laboratory aboard the research station Archimedes, Dr. Amara Johnson stood before the most dangerous weapon humanity had ever created. She was 62 years old, a physicist who had spent 40 years pushing the boundaries of what was possible. Project Helios was her masterwork and her nightmare. The device itself was small, no larger than a human fist. But the equations behind it were elegant and terrible. It would trigger a cascade reaction in a star's core, causing it to go supernova centuries ahead of schedule. One weapon could destroy an entire solar system. A dozen could end a civilization. Director Morrison had given her approval to use it. One Helios device deployed at Kryloth Prime would end the war instantly. Billions would die, soldiers and civilians alike, and the Kryloth Empire would cease to exist. It would also prove to the galaxy that humanity was willing to commit genocide when pushed far enough. Amara had spent 3 sleepless nights considering the decision. She had lost her daughter to a Kryloth raid 20 years ago. Part of her wanted revenge on a scale that would shake the stars. But another part, the part that had dedicated her life to science and discovery, understood what using this weapon would mean. She contacted Commander Chen directly. The Helios device is ready. I can deploy it whenever you give the order. But Sarah, if we do this, we become what they always said we were. Dangerous. Uncontrollable. A species that will destroy everything when threatened. Sarah's face on the screen looked tired but determined. Can we win without it? Yes, Amara said. It will take longer. More of our people will die. But we can win through conventional means. Then we don't use it. Not now, not ever, unless we face extinction itself. We're fighting to prove that we deserve respect, not to prove that we're monsters. Dismantle the device, Amara. Make sure no one can ever rebuild it. Amara felt something release in her chest. You're sure? I'm sure. We win this war the right way, or we don't deserve to win at all. Deep in the galactic core, in a region where matter and energy behaved in ways that defied conventional physics, beings of immense age and power took notice. The architects had existed for millions of years, watching civilizations rise and fall like waves on an ocean. They never interfered. They simply observed, recording the patterns of galactic evolution. But the human Kryloth war was different. It wasn't following expected patterns. The younger species was winning against impossible odds, but more importantly, they were showing restraint when they had the power to destroy. That combination was rare enough to warrant attention. The architect known as Eldest convened a gathering. Its thoughts rippled across dimensions, reaching others of its kind. The humans possess weapons that could sterilize worlds. They choose not to use them. They have the Kryloth homeworld surrounded. They choose negotiation before annihilation. This is unusual. They are afraid, suggested another. They fear retaliation from other species. No, Eldest replied. Their fear is overcome by their anger. Yet still they choose restraint. This suggests something deeper. A philosophical position that values principle over expedience. Such species rarely survive, noted a third architect. They are destroyed by those with fewer scruples. Or they become something greater, Eldest said. I propose we issue a message. Nothing that interferes directly, merely an observation that guides others toward wisdom. The architects had not spoken to the younger races in 500,000 years. Their words carried weight beyond mere meaning. When they broadcast their message across all known communication channels, every species in the galaxy stopped to listen. We have observed the conflict between humanity and the Kryloth Empire. We note that the humans possess sufficient force to annihilate their enemy entirely. We note that they have chosen not to. This restraint combined with power represents a rare evolutionary achievement. We advise all species to consider carefully before making themselves enemies of humanity. Those who show wisdom may find allies. Those who show aggression may find themselves facing an enemy unlike any they have encountered before. This is our observation. We return now to silence. The message changed everything. Species that had been gathering forces to aid the Kryloth suddenly reconsidered. The architects had called humanity wise. Elder races that had dismissed humans as primitive began reviewing their assessments. Fear and respect mingled in equal measure across the galaxy. On Kryloth Prime, Fleet Commander Corvan received a summons to the Imperial Palace. He walked through corridors lined with statues of ancient victories, past monuments to 10,000 years of conquest. The Empire had seemed eternal. Now it was crumbling, and everyone was looking for someone to blame. Emperor Kalthan sat on a throne carved from a single massive crystal. He was old even by Kryloth standards, having ruled for 3 centuries. He had never known defeat. He had never imagined his empire could fall. Tell me how to stop them, he commanded. Corvan stood straight despite his fear. We can't, Your Majesty. Not with conventional tactics. They're too fast, too precise. Our weapons can't hit them. Their weapons cut through our defenses like they're not there. And they're not even using their full fleet. 70% of their forces are still positioned defensively. If they committed everything, we would fall within weeks. Then what do you suggest? Surrender? Negotiation, Corvan said carefully. They offered terms. Commander Zarthek stands trial for the massacre at New Horizon. We pay reparations. We acknowledge wrongdoing. In exchange, the war ends, and our empire survives. You want me to bow to primitives? To admit that the Kryloth Empire was wrong. I want you to save our civilization, Your Majesty. Pride won't stop their weapons. Honor won't bring back our dead ships. We were wrong about humanity. They're not primitives. They're survivors of a death world who learned to hide their strength until they needed it. And now they're teaching us what that strength means. The Emperor was silent for a long time. Finally, he spoke. Send a message to Commander Chen. Tell her we accept her terms. When Sarah Chen received the surrender offer, she felt no triumph, only exhaustion. The war had lasted 3 months. Humanity had lost 800 ships and 40,000 personnel. The Kryloth had lost 60,000 ships and millions of soldiers. Dozens of worlds had been devastated. The economic cost would take generations to repair. But it was over. Commander Zarthek would face trial. The families of New Horizon would receive justice. And the galaxy would know that humanity could be pushed only so far. She broadcast a final message to the Galactic Council. The war is over. We didn't want it, but we won't apologize for fighting it. We've proven that humanity deserves a place at the table, not as subjects but as equals. To species that remain neutral, we offer friendship. To species that aided the Kryloth, we offer a chance to make amends. And to everyone watching, we offer this lesson. Respect is not given freely to the weak. But mercy can be given freely by the strong. Judge us by both. The message spread across 1,000 worlds, and the galaxy began the long process of accepting its new reality. Humanity had declared war, and in winning it without becoming monsters, they had earned something more valuable than fear. They had earned respect that could never again be taken away.